Judge Clarence Thomas sat high above them all, backlit by towering marble and cold tradition. His voice could have cut glass. His eyes didn't blink. He looked down at the woman standing before him, Representative Jasmine Crockett. You've ignored this court's orders. Time and again. I hereby fine you $500 million. The room froze. Not because of the number, but because everyone realized what it meant. This wasn't justice. This was a hit job. Even the lawyers glanced at each other. Not shocked. Just stunned. That fine wasn't meant to punish. It was meant to destroy. And yet, Jasmine didn't move. Didn't blink. She just stood up, slow and steady, like she was rising into her own story. Are you finished? Gasps swept through the chamber. A pin drop would have sounded like thunder. Thomas leaned forward. Excuse me. I said, are you finished? She repeated, calm as ever. Because I am. Then, without a flicker of drama, she reached into her blazer and pulled out a slim yellow folder. One folder. She handed it to the clerk like she was returning a borrowed pen. Please add that to the record. The clerk frowned. What is it? Truth, Jasmine said. Depositions. Dated financial records. Internal memos. Emails. All sworn. All sourced. Judge Thomas narrowed his eyes. Miss Crockett, she didn't flinch. Congresswoman. And respectfully, those documents show you have financial ties to 3 of the 4 private firms that lobbied for this fine. A ripple moved through the crowd. Someone dropped their phone. Another stood, then sat, as if the truth hit like gravity. That's a lie. Thomas barked. No, she said, taking a step closer. It's math. It's dates. It's names. And you should have stepped away from this case the moment that connection existed. His grip tightened on the gavel. This is a smear campaign. No. It's what happens when power hides behind robes and expects silence in return. The air changed. Murmurs spread. Heads turned. You think people didn't notice that dinner you had 3 months ago with execs from Willcraft Holdings? Or that, 2 weeks later, a sealed memo targeting me circulated in the same legal language you used in your ruling? Slam. The gavel tried to shut her up again. But she was done being quiet. You've turned this courtroom into a weapon. But here's the thing, Judge. I don't scare easy. A court officer stepped forward. Another judge leaned over, whispering urgently. Thomas didn't move. This court is in recess, he began. No, she cut in. This court is being watched. She turned to the gallery, to the everyday people sitting in the pews like observers to a rigged game. If you've ever been told to stay quiet, to play along, to sit down and take it, this is your moment. Because this isn't just about me. It's about what happens when someone finally says, enough. People stood. 1, then 3, then a whole row. No chants. No slogans. Just presence. Silent and powerful. Jasmine turned back toward the bench. You want to fine me $500 million to make an example? Here's my example. Never sit in a room built to silence you. Rewrite the room. Thomas opened his mouth. But then, the clerk stood. The same clerk who'd taken the file. Your Honor, she said, voice trembling. I've read the documents. The entire courtroom stilled. They appear valid. Timelines match. Signatures match. These claims, they're serious. One judge reached for the phone. Another whispered urgently to a colleague. And for the first time, Thomas's expression cracked. Something broke in his armor. This court will recess for... He started to stand. One more thing, Jasmine said. He froze. That file. It's already been forwarded. To the Ethics Committee. To 3 federal agencies. And to every journalist waiting outside. Fade out. Judge Clarence Thomas didn't move. Jasmine Crockett did. You think I showed up here to save myself? She asked, her voice steady, filling the space without force. I'm here for the ones you tried to silence. The ones who never had a podium or a camera. I'm here for every voice you thought no one would ever listen to. Thomas turned his back and walked toward the door. But the gallery behind Jasmine was no longer watching him. They were watching her. For the first time in that courtroom, the robes didn't carry the power. Truth did. She sat back down, composed, not triumphant, grounded. Behind the bench, a quiet stir began. An aide stepped in, whispered to the remaining justices. Heads turned. Notes passed. Then one judge leaned forward. "Representative Crockett," he said, "we will reconvene in 15 minutes to examine the contents of your submitted materials." She nodded once. Outside, the courthouse had become a flashpoint. The marble steps overflowed with bodies, journalists, citizens, students, even a few members of Congress slipping in through the side door. Not to speak. Just to witness. Inside, Jasmine stood alone by a window on the second floor. She wasn't rehearsing. She was sipping water. One hand in her pocket, the other resting on the windowsill, watching the crowd gather like storm clouds. "How many cameras are out there now?" her staffer whispered. She didn't turn. "Doesn't matter," she said. "This isn't about cameras. It's about what stays on the record." Back in the courtroom, 2 judges returned. Thomas's chair sat empty, his nameplate untouched. A senior judge took the mic, visibly tense. "This court recognizes that Representative Jasmine Crockett has introduced new evidence into the record. That evidence has been reviewed." He paused. A long pause. "We have questions." It hit like a shift in wind. The direction of pressure had changed. Jasmine was no longer on defense. Now, the room leaned toward her. A prosecutor stood next. Cautious. Careful. "Given the contents of the submitted material, and what appears to be a substantial conflict of interest involving Justice Thomas, we recommend the court suspend the imposed fine until a full and independent review is completed." Gasps again. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She nodded once, calm. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said. "I believe in the process, when it's clean." The prosecutor tried to regain footing. "That does not absolve the charges against," she cut in. "No. But it does show that the charges were drafted using language provided by lobbying firms. And those firms are directly tied to companies Justice Thomas is financially invested in." "That's not a theory," she added. "That's a documented chain of custody." One junior judge leaned forward. "Would you be willing to provide full access to the raw data?" She didn't hesitate. "You'll find a secure link in the court's inbox." A beat. Then the same clerk, the one from earlier, stood again. "I've reviewed the file. All timestamps match. Metadata checks out. Source files intact." She sat back down. But Jasmine remained standing. "I didn't come here to be pitted," she said. "I came because power left unchecked becomes infection. And you don't whisper infections away. You bring them into the light." A hush fell. No applause. No outbursts. Just stillness, the kind that comes when everyone realizes they're part of something bigger than themselves. The judge glanced at the bench, visibly burdened. "This court will suspend the previous ruling in full," he said, "pending the outcome of this investigation." And then it happened. The courtroom doors creaked open. Click, click, click. Camera shutters snapped like tiny sparks. Judge Clarence Thomas walked back in. But he didn't wear his robe. He didn't return to the bench. He walked to the floor. To the same level as everyone else. In a dark suit, shoulders stiff, face unreadable, he stood across from Jasmine, for the first time, eye to eye. No pedestal. No performance. The judge addressed him. "Justice Thomas, this court is in session." "I'm aware," he said. Then turned to Jasmine. "This is a misunderstanding." She didn't blink. "No," she said. "It's a system. And it's never been built for people like me to push back. But I pushed anyway." He opened his mouth to speak. He opened his mouth, then shut it. His voice softened, almost human. "You really think this helps your reputation?" he asked. "You just went to war with a sitting Supreme Court justice." Jasmine stepped forward, steady. "No," she said. "I reminded a justice that power is rented. And the people, we're the landlords." The words didn't echo. They landed. And once again, the gallery rose, not on cue, but in unison. As if everyone finally understood that what they were witnessing wasn't courtroom drama. It was justice, unchained. Thomas turned and walked away. No one stopped him this time. He passed the press, the court officers, the cameras that once painted him in soft light. Now they just watched. Jasmine sat down. No smile. No fist in the air. Just a deep breath. The judge leaned in again, tapped the mic. "This court will enter temporary dismissal of the $500 million penalty," he said, "pending a full audit of potential judicial conflict." She nodded, expression unchanged. One camera zoomed in. Her hands, resting calmly on the table, didn't move. No twitch. No fidget. Because this was never about performance. She hadn't come for the show. She came for the shift. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had swelled. Not with chaos, but with clarity. The chants weren't angry. They were aligned. Unified. Rhythmic. Power. Truth. People. And as Jasmine Crockett stepped out the front doors, no escort, no barricade, people didn't just follow her. They followed what she stood for. A movement walked behind her. Then it broke. CNN dropped the banner first, "The Crockett Files, Justice on Trial." By the time MSNBC aired the clip, the yellow folder Jasmine had handed the clerk was live, anonymously uploaded, but digitally watermarked from a secure congressional network. It spread like wildfire. Cable. YouTube. Telegram. X. Threads. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag the Crockett Files, hashtag receipts, not rage, hashtag power truth people. And the headlines? Did Justice Thomas violate federal recusal laws? $500 million backfires, Crockett versus the court, and she's winning. Jasmine hadn't posted a single tweet. Her team hadn't booked a single interview. But the press lined up outside her office by 9 a.m. Microphones formed a forest. She walked past them quietly. No sunglasses. No entourage. Just her phone and her purpose. She stopped for a second, looked at the closest reporter, and said, "Let the process finish before you start filming documentaries." Then she walked inside and shut the door. Across town, chaos. The Supreme Court's press office was scrambling. Clerks were buried in old filings. Spokespeople were stonewalling with blanket, "No comments." Behind closed doors, a leaked memo made the rounds. "We underestimated her completely. This wasn't defense. This was strategy." Justice Thomas was unreachable. His calendar cleared. His phone, silent. Even colleagues couldn't get through. The Chief Justice requested a meeting. No response. But the Ethics Committee didn't wait. By noon, they issued a statement. "We are opening a formal investigation into Justice Clarence Thomas concerning financial entanglements and judicial misconduct. The Crockett materials will be central to our inquiry." That last line echoed across the nation. The Crockett materials. Cable anchors said it like scripture. In the White House press room, the press secretary, usually guarded, said, "We support full accountability, no matter where it leads." That afternoon, Jasmine entered a closed-door hearing on infrastructure. She wasn't scheduled to speak. But when she walked in, everyone looked up. One aide whispered, not realizing she could hear him, "That's her." She took down Thomas. Jasmine glanced sideways, calm as ever. "I didn't take him down," she said. "He built the fall himself. I just brought the receipts." And then she sat down. No tension in her shoulders. No spectacle. Just readiness. The meeting resumed. Business went on. But the air was different. Not just in that room. Everywhere. Because America had just seen something rare. A black woman walk into a room built to silence her, stand against power, and walk out with truth at her back. Not by yelling. Not by pleading. But by documenting. By daring. By not flinching. Even among conservatives, there was a shift. Some grumbled. Others, reluctantly, gave credit. One Fox News anchor opened with, "You don't have to like her politics, but you'd be a fool not to respect the way she played this." Behind closed doors, Thomas's allies were fracturing. A senior legal advisor posted, then quickly deleted a tweet. We told him. That fine was never going to hold. But it was too late. The damage had already gone digital. Memes flooded the internet. Side-by-side images. Thomas slamming a gavel versus Jasmine calmly sliding a file across the table. Caption: Noise versus proof. A TikTok went viral, pairing courtroom audio with a chessboard. The final move. Jasmine's queen gliding across the board. 12.8 million views. And climbing. But inside her office, no celebration. Jasmine stood at the window, arms folded. We don't dance on wreckage, she said to her team. We push forward. What about interviews? Someone asked. She shook her head. Not yet. The story's still unfolding. Because she knew. This wasn't just about one man in one robe. This was about the line between power and the people, and who gets to hold it accountable. Next morning, a new letter dropped from the House Judiciary Committee. They weren't investigating Jasmine. They were opening a formal inquiry into financial influence on judicial rulings, and how private lobbying shaped the very decisions meant to be impartial. They gave it a name, the Crockett Inquiry. 3 words that made Thomas's defenders go silent. That afternoon, Jasmine finally stepped up to a podium. No script. No spin. Just her. I didn't pick this fight, she said. But I finished it. The room leaned in. Because when someone in power punishes people for standing in truth, they stop being a judge. And start becoming a threat. The crowd erupted. The clip hit 4 million views in under 3 hours. But behind the scenes, pressure was mounting. At the Supreme Court, staffers scrambled. Clerks re-reviewed old filings. Press aides issued a wall of no comment. A leaked internal memo confirmed what many suspected. This wasn't a reaction. This was a strategy. And we never saw it coming. Justice Thomas. Gone dark. Cancelled appearances. Ignored calls. Missed internal meetings. The Chief Justice requested a sit-down. No reply. But the Ethics Committee didn't wait. By sunrise, a subpoena had been issued. Stamped, sealed, and hand-delivered. To 3 judicial oversight board members, 4 lobbying groups, 1 offshore financial firm registered in the Caymans. The title? Federal Judiciary Inquiry, Phase 1. No names were listed. But everyone knew who it was about. That morning, 2 longtime aides quietly cleared their desks. One intern left a handwritten note. He stopped listening to the law a long time ago. Inside Jasmine's office, no confetti. Just a growing stack of urgent messages. Ethics lawyers. Whistleblowers. Retired clerks. All pointing in the same direction. It's not just him. Start with 2020. Follow the federal bond trail. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, hands steepled. They're not sending this because they trust me, she said. They're sending it because I proved I'm not afraid to open the door. Her chief of staff looked at her. You really want to go through with it? Jasmine didn't blink. No, she said. I want to blow the door off its hinges. Then came the envelope. A secure drop. No sender name. Single PDF. Subject line. Private mediation proposal. Confidential inside. An offer. If you publicly withdraw your request to unseal Thomas's financial records, our legal affiliates will recommend full dismissal of your fine. Plus, a $10 million philanthropic donation to your district. Jasmine read it once. Then again. Then forwarded it to the Office of Congressional Ethics. No post. No press leak. No performance. Just protocol. And that silence. It spoke louder than any tweet. Within hours, the law firm listed on the document denied involvement. Then took down its donor disclosure tab. Then the entire website went offline. Back in court. The foundation was crumbling. A temporary judge was assigned to replace Thomas. They froze all financial enforcement against Jasmine and requested sworn affidavits from the original plaintiffs. Only one responded. And he flipped. A former board member admitted under oath he'd been approached months earlier by a legal intermediary, pressured to pursue a claim. Promised a political favor. And so, It was no longer about one fine, or one folder, or one woman. It was about what happens when truth is louder than power. And a black woman, calm, composed, unstoppable, looked the system in the eye and didn't flinch. They didn't find Jasmine Crockett because she broke a rule. They fined her because she broke the silence. Behind closed doors, a lobbyist signed a sworn statement. Not just any lobbyist, but one connected to the very group that had pushed to penalize her. What did it say? That Jasmine was a threat. That her voice had to be handled before the next budget vote. No names were listed, but the direction was clear: neutralize her. That memo made its way to the Department of Justice. And suddenly, everything shifted. Senators who had once stayed quiet started tweeting cryptic messages about judicial ethics. Campaign donors, pulling funding from any politician with ties to Thomas's old rulings. And for the first time, the authority of a Supreme Court decision was under fire, not by analysts, but by lawmakers. And Jasmine? She walked into a crowded university hall packed with students, paused at the mic, and said just one thing: power protects itself, until someone walks in and says, not today. Then she looked up and said, that's what I did. And I'm not done. She wasn't kidding. 2 days later, she filed a motion to subpoena sealed communication logs, direct messages between Clarence Thomas and 3 CEOs with known stakes in deregulation cases. The reaction was instant. Critics in Congress cried foul. This is personal, they shouted. A political hit job. But the public wasn't buying it. Poll after poll showed her support rising, not just among Democrats, but among independents, even moderate Republicans. A shocking 72% of voters now said Crockett had exposed something deeply broken in the system. And just when it looked like things might slow down, she got a knock on her door. No one was there. Just an envelope on the ground. No return address. No stamp. Just a torn napkin inside, with 5 handwritten words: keep going. We got you. Also inside, a flash drive. Encrypted. Once decrypted, it revealed a paper trail, dates, transfers, flights, linking Thomas directly to a luxury real estate developer whose company had just won a hotly contested zoning battle. Guess who wrote the majority opinion? Clarence Thomas. The dots weren't just connecting, they were forming a map. And Jasmine? She didn't back off. She called a press conference. No stage. No fancy intro. Just 10 minutes and one microphone. Wearing a navy blue suit, she walked up calmly, pulled out the napkin, and held it in the air. Then she said, I didn't come for the court. I came for clarity. And every time they try to bury us in numbers, we'll come back with names. She paused. This isn't a headline. This is cleanup. I'm not asking this system to change itself anymore. I'm telling it, your time is up. That was all. She walked off. Within minutes, #NapkinNote and #CrockettCleanup were trending across the internet. Cable news anchors tossed their scripts. One pundit admitted live on air, we thought she was just defending herself. We didn't realize she was building a case. And behind the scenes, Clarence Thomas was handed a quiet suggestion: you may want to consider retiring voluntarily before this becomes permanent. The next morning, 6 a.m., a statement appeared on the Supreme Court website. No press. No cameras. Just one cold paragraph, in official font. Justice Clarence Thomas acknowledges the growing public concern surrounding financial conflicts connected to past decisions. He maintains his innocence, and asserts that Representative Jasmine Crockett acted with political intent. However, to preserve trust in the court, he will temporarily recuse himself from all rulings until the Ethics Committee completes its review. No admission. No resignation. But make no mistake, he blinked. For the first time in over 3 decades, Justice Thomas stepped back. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. The media didn't soften the blow. CNN, why now? MSNBC, because she cornered him. HuffPost, this is Crockett's Wall Street moment, but for the court. By noon, Congress had already scheduled emergency hearings. The title? Accountability in the highest court, Ethics, Power, and Reform. And guess who was called as the lead witness? Jasmine Crockett. One senator tried to object, said she was too emotionally involved. He was quickly reminded, sometimes that's exactly who you want. No press team. No wardrobe prep. No spin. Jasmine Crockett didn't come to perform. She came to expose. Inside her office, things had changed. No more defending. No more reacting. No. It was time to strike. "What's your opening move?" her counsel asked. Jasmine didn't hesitate. "Pattern. You mean the money trail?" "No," she said. "I mean the silence. The years they thought no one would speak." Because this wasn't just about Clarence Thomas. Or a fine. Or one shady trip. This was about the system, the billionaire donors behind shell companies, the speaking gigs that were really vacations, the fake firms funding influence. The rot was deep. And Jasmine? She brought receipts. Not stylists. Not talking points. Just facts and fire. The night before the hearing, a journalist at The Atlantic posted, "We're not watching a scandal. We're witnessing a shift in political gravity." And that shift had a name. Jasmine Crockett. By dawn, her name was trending in 11 states. 83% of Americans agreed. Supreme Court justices should follow the same financial disclosure laws as everyone else. Republicans were split. Some tried to spin it. Others just backed away quietly. One staffer leaked a text that said it all, "We should have backed off. She's in control now." And she was. She arrived at the hearing in a black suit, holding a single manila folder. No entourage. No notes. To the press, she said, "This isn't left or right. It's about the line, and who thinks they're above it." Inside, the gallery was packed. 5 former federal judges. 2 whistleblowers. Reporters from 6 countries. And a row of justices behind dark glass. The first question came fast. "When did you realize this was bigger than the fine?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "When they said $500 million. That's not accountability. That's a warning shot." "And your response?" She nodded. "They tried to intimidate. I held up a mirror." The room laughed, not in mockery, but recognition. Another senator tried to go in hard. "Didn't you benefit politically from all this chaos?" "I didn't create the chaos," she said. "I uncovered it. Do you think this hurts the credibility of the court?" She didn't blink. "It's already hurt. The only question left is whether we clean the wound or let it fester." A hush fell. Pens scratched. A few jaws dropped. Then came the real push. "You've been accused of running a personal vendetta." She leaned forward. "I didn't come for revenge. I came for answers. If Justice Thomas is cleared, he should return. But until then, he gets treated the same way anyone else would." She paused. "Because if he's not above the evidence, then none of us are above the truth." By the time she stepped out of the chamber, 2 new subpoenas had already been filed. Outside, a voice called from the crowd, "They're scared of you." Jasmine turned, just for a second, and replied, "They should be scared of what silence costs. I just stopped paying the bill." That night, 2:34 a.m. To be exact, the internet broke wide open. A scratchy, 47-second audio file leaked on an encrypted platform. Reddit, Twitter, Signal. It was everywhere within 20 minutes. Politico picked it up. Caption read, "Clarence Thomas. Private strategy meeting. June." The voice was unmistakable. "She thinks this is about her. Let her burn hot. We'll drown her in noise before anyone hears the facts." Then another voice, "And the fine, that's bait. Make her look greedy. Watch her crack." Low laughter. Then silence. And then chaos. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag the bait plan, hashtag Thomas tapes, hashtag Crockett was right within hours. 2 forensic labs verified the audio. No edits. No tampering. The voice was real. Clarence Thomas. Cable news dropped everything. Anchors went off script. "This wasn't justice," one said. "This was a setup. A trap. And she didn't fall for it, she flipped it." By morning, the Supreme Court's press office went dark. They tried to brush it off. Justice Thomas called the leaked clip out of context, said it was from a strategy session, unrelated to any real case. But no one believed that. Not after 5 weeks of subpoenas, mysterious resignations, and whispers thick enough to choke D.C. Now the Ethics Committee was in emergency mode. Judicial Watch demanded every internal memo from the last 6 months. And Congress, they sent a letter. A clear warning: if this tape is real, the court may have conspired to punish a sitting lawmaker for doing her job. It wasn't just a legal scandal anymore. It was a constitutional crisis. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her office, scrolling headlines. Her comms director stepped in, nervous. Everyone's asking for a comment. CNN, BBC, The Times. Jasmine didn't flinch. "Let them wait," she said. It wasn't pride. It was precision. Because what no one knew, not the press, not the public, not even the committee, was that Jasmine already had the full tape. Not a clip. The entire recording. 61 minutes. Clean audio. 3 voices. A timestamp. A location. Her chief of staff whispered, "Do we drop it?" Jasmine shook her head. "Not yet. Let them lie first. Then we hit them where it hurts." Across town, the panic was escalating. A few federal judges scrambled onto a private call. One of them leaked the summary. "She owns the public," one judge said. "We own the robes. But right now, the robes are losing." By the next morning, 3 new links surfaced. Thomas's wife bought stock in a firm that lobbied hard against Jasmine's last transparency bill. A PAC that pushed for Jasmine's censure? Turns out, it was taking foreign money, hidden as donations. And a memo, buried 6 months ago, called Crockett's growing influence a threat to judicial balance. The pieces weren't just falling into place. They were forming a weapon. Then Jasmine moved. No warning. No leaks. She walked straight into a press room so packed it felt like the air had weight. No notes. No prompter. Just her. "You've heard the clip," she said. "I've heard the full conversation. And guess what? There were more than 2 voices." A beat. A gasp. Cameras clicked. "This wasn't about silencing me," she said. "This was about sending a message. If you speak too loudly, they'll find a way to shut you down, quietly, legally, permanently." And then, "I'm not releasing the full tape. Not yet. I'm giving them 48 hours. To come clean. Not to me. To the people." She walked off. Not a single question taken. None needed. Hashtag Crockett Countdown started trending before she made it back to her office. Justice Thomas blinked. He released a second statement. Shaky, defensive. "The Congresswoman's claims are exaggerated. Any further leaks will be considered retaliation." Wrong move. Because now, the public didn't just want the full tape. They demanded it. By nightfall, calls for his resignation started pouring in, from inside the court itself. One unnamed justice told The Guardian, "He's compromised. Every day he stays silent, he endangers the legitimacy of the bench." Meanwhile, Jasmine's approval hit 78%. The highest in Congress. Petitions started flying in, a new task force, led by her, on judicial reform. In her war room, Jasmine paced. Focused. "They thought this was chess," she said. "But this was poker." She stopped, staring at the countdown clock. "We didn't just call their bluff. We made them show their hand. And now, they're folding. 0 hour. No apology. No correction. No confession." At exactly 9 a.m., Jasmine's team uploaded the full tape. 61 minutes. High definition. Crystal clear audio. 3 voices. Justice Clarence Thomas. A senior policy strategist linked to a federal oversight group. ADC. Lobbyist with ties to multiple pending court cases. The transcript was worse than anyone expected. "The fine's not about guilt," one voice said. "It's about making her too toxic to touch." "Let her scream," another voice added. "Media cycles die in 48 hours. And then Thomas, she's too clean to smear, so we use the system. Slow her down. Drain her. Break her spirit before she gets momentum. The last 30 seconds were pure calculation. Even if she flips this, we stall. Delays the point. Keep her chasing shadows. By the time she catches up, it won't matter. And now, it does matter. Because the truth is out. All of it. And Jasmine Crockett. She didn't just survive the storm. She changed the weather. They thought she'd be tired. They assumed she'd be drained, like every woman who burns through her political capital just to win one righteous fight. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't tired. She was just getting started. The moment the files went public, 5 senior members of Congress called a press conference, within the hour. No teleprompters. No hesitation. This is judicial sabotage, said one. A betrayal of the public trust, added another. Then came the line that broke through the noise. We will move to suspend Justice Clarence Thomas pending full criminal review. America froze. This wasn't a scandal, it was a reckoning. For the first time in U.S. history, a sitting Supreme Court justice faced bipartisan calls for suspension. CNN cut live. MSNBC followed. TikTok lit up, mixing Jasmine's voice with dramatic music and courtroom montages. Hashtags flew. Hashtag Crockett Clause, hashtag Justice on Trial, hashtag Thomas down. But while social media exploded, Jasmine stayed quiet. No interviews. No celebrations. No dance around the fire she had lit. She was in closed-door meetings with legal experts, coordinating with civil rights leaders, drafting legislation that would make judicial financial disclosures mandatory for every sitting justice, forever. Behind the marble walls of the Supreme Court, the panic had already begun. 2 clerks resigned. 3 justices reportedly held a private vote of no confidence. The Chief Justice broke tradition and released a statement, "We are deeply troubled. The court cannot fulfill its duty if one of our own has broken its ethical foundation." Even Thomas's inner circle began to fracture. A senior advisor stepped down. Former clerks signed a rare joint letter condemning his conduct. Donors pulled funding from legal organizations bearing his name. That night, Jasmine's team received an encrypted message. It came from a number tied to a senior federal judge. "You've done what decades of pressure couldn't." The robes protected themselves. Until now. The next morning, the House Oversight Committee scheduled a historic vote on a new emergency act, the Judicial Ethics Breach Response Act, unofficially known by everyone on the Hill as the Crockett Clause. Jasmine was asked to open the floor. No speech in hand. No printed notes. Just a navy suit, a calm walk to the mic, and a pause. And then she said it. "They tried to silence me. They failed. They tried to bury me in doubt. I climbed out. And now I speak for everyone who's ever been told the law doesn't apply to power. Power without accountability isn't stability. It's tyranny. And this vote isn't about me. It's about the next person who thinks the robe makes them untouchable." Silence. Then a wave of people stood, quietly, one by one. No chants. Just respect. The vote, 387 to 48. Justice Clarence Thomas, suspended indefinitely, pending full criminal review. Jasmine left without applause. No smile. Just a simple sentence to the press. "We're not done. The system's not clean. But now we know it can bleed." 3 days later, Clarence Thomas vanished from the court. No farewell. No ceremony. No press statement. Just a black car. A sealed letter to the Chief Justice. Inside, one sentence, "I request immediate administrative leave. Indefinite duration." For the first time in American history, a Supreme Court justice didn't leave by retirement. He was pushed, by truth, by public pressure, by a woman who refused to be quiet. But Jasmine, she still didn't take a victory lap. She turned down every interview, even the ones with 7-figure offers. Instead, she walked into a quiet, classified ethics meeting. 6 lawmakers. 3 judges. 2 whistleblowers from the same lobbying firm that once shielded Thomas. She didn't ask for applause. She brought a plan. This doesn't end with one justice. It ends when the system that let him get away with it gets dismantled. Quietly. Legally. Permanently. No one in that room questioned her. Because now, they knew, when Jasmine Crockett speaks, History doesn't just listen. It changes. They tried to bury her in bureaucracy. Bury the truth in noise. But Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. They handed her the largest congressional fine in history, $500 million, and expected her to vanish under its weight. Instead, she walked straight through it, carrying not vengeance, but evidence. The moment the file dropped, everything shifted. 5 congressional leaders, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 1 independent, stood shoulder to shoulder at a hastily called press conference. "This isn't politics," one said. "It's judicial sabotage." "A betrayal of public trust," said another. By the end of that hour, they announced what no one thought possible: a formal motion to suspend Justice Clarence Thomas pending full criminal review. It was unprecedented, unimaginable. But it was happening. Live. CNN cut to a stunned anchor mid-sentence. MSNBC flipped straight into breaking news. TikTok flooded with edits, soundtracked by courtroom dramas, layered with Jasmine's voice. Power without accountability isn't order. It's oppression. Hashtag Crockett Clause, hashtag Justice on Trial, hashtag Receipts, not Revenge, hashtag Clarence Down. They all trended. Globally. But Jasmine, she didn't bask in it. No interviews. No headlines. She was in back-to-back strategy sessions, with civil rights lawyers, with ethics scholars, with quiet voices who'd waited decades for someone to break the silence. Behind the scenes, the Supreme Court shook. 2 clerks resigned. 3 justices held a private vote of no confidence. The Chief Justice released a chilling public note: the court cannot fulfill its duty when one of its members violates core ethical standards. Inside Thomas's own circle, the walls cracked. A top advisor quit. His former clerks signed an open letter condemning his actions. Major donors pulled funding from every legal non-profit tied to his name. Then came the message. Encrypted. Anonymous. From a federal judge: you did what decades of pressure couldn't. The robes always protected themselves. Until now. The next morning, Congress gathered again. Title: Temporary Suspension of Judicial Authority, Ethics Breach Response Act. Unofficially, the Crockett Clause. Jasmine walked in. No notes. No teleprompter. Just her presence. "I didn't come for revenge," she said. "I came for receipts." The chamber didn't roar. It stood, unified, breath held. A moment where history sat in silence to listen. The vote, 387 to 48. Justice Clarence Thomas, suspended indefinitely pending full criminal review. No gavel bang. No TV farewell. 3 days later, a black unmarked car pulled up to the court's rear exit. Thomas got in. Left a sealed letter on the Chief Justice's desk. Inside: "I request immediate administrative leave. Indefinite duration." No resignation. No admission. Just absence. And Jasmine? She didn't tour the networks. She didn't cash the 7-figure interview offers. She didn't host a rally or print T-shirts. Instead, she walked into a private ethics summit with 6 members of Congress, 3 judges, and 2 whistleblowers from the very firm that once tried to buy her silence. Her message was simple: this doesn't end with one justice. It ends when the system that enabled him is dismantled. Quietly, legally, permanently. They got to work. In the weeks that followed, reforms came like waves. A binding federal law requiring all judges, including SCOTUS, to disclose all gifts, assets, and affiliations quarterly. A new independent oversight panel with subpoena power and public transparency mandates. A real-time digital ledger showing the financial ties behind every judicial ruling. They called it the Judicial Transparency Package. But the people called it something else: Crockett's Law. And across the nation, something else changed. News anchors no longer whispered about the court. They spoke of it like a system, flawed and fixable. Law students rewrote their theses. Civics teachers printed her testimony as classroom material. TikTok lit up with reenactments. Jasmine in the courtroom, folder in hand, across from a silent Thomas. Caption: she brought proof. He brought problems. Mugs. Shirts. Stickers. $500 million fine. Zero fear. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She went home. Held town halls. Met with mothers. Sat with students. At one meeting, a young woman stood up and asked, "How did you not break?" Jasmine smiled. "I did," she said. "But only in private. And then I built something stronger from the pieces." You could feel the room hold its breath. Because it wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about survival. It was about legacy. A week later, the Chief Justice made a rare televised appearance. The Supreme Court has long been immune to the pressures of transparency. As of today, that era is over. Behind closed doors, the fallout continued. More subpoenas. Lobbyists banned. Law firms blacklisted. The DOJ launched new investigations. Clarence Thomas referred to the FBI. And Jasmine, she released a 10-word statement, "Let the law do what they never expected it to." No spin. No press run. Just law. Months later, the National Archives unveiled a new exhibit. It wasn't a trophy. It was a framed printout, the original $500 million fine. Beside it, her quote. Her testimony. The reforms. A plaque that read, "She was handed the heaviest penalty in congressional history." She turned it into the most powerful judicial reform since Watergate. She didn't just fight back, she rebuilt the battlefield. And still, Jasmine spoke rarely. Until the end of the term. She rose, looked around the chamber, and gave her final words, "If they come for you with power, answer with proof." That's what I did. No mic drop. No ego. Just truth. Served ice cold. Because that's who she became. Not a politician. Not a firebrand. A reminder, even the highest court in the land lives under the Constitution. And if it forgets, Jasmine Crockett will remind it.